What would you do if you discovered your family's love for you was based on what you could give them? Austin had worked his entire life to earn his parents' love, but after hearing they took the money for his birthday party and gave it to his sister for a vacation, his world crumbled. But Grandma had different plans. Instead of letting him be another forgotten afterthought, she made sure he was celebrated. Will Austin finally get the recognition he deserves? Stay tuned to find out how he takes control, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories. My name's Austin, and I'm about to turn 20. Right now, I'm in the middle of finals week at college, buried under textbooks and empty coffee cups, studying finance. It's a tough major, but numbers have always been my thing. As I sit here in my dorm room, exhaustion weighing me down, my mind drifts to my birthday. My family's planning to celebrate it once my exams are over. Family celebrations? They've always left a bitter taste in my mouth. Growing up, I was always the black sheep. Dallas, my older sister, is 25 now, and she's always been the golden child, the one my parents doted on. Me? I was just an afterthought. I'll never forget when I was 8. It was Dallas's 13th birthday, and my parents threw her this huge party bouncy castle magician, a cake that was practically bigger than me. I remember feeling so excited, thinking my birthday would be just as grand. But when mine came around, all I got was a small grocery store cake and a pair of socks. I tried to hold it together, but I couldn't. The tears came, and my mom just patted my head, dismissing me with, "Don't be dramatic, Austin, it's just a birthday." That was the moment I realized I was different, less important somehow. As I got older, that feeling only grew. Dallas got the newest phone every year, while I inherited her old ones. She got designer clothes and I got hand-me-downs. When she graduated high school, my parents bought her a car. When I graduated, they handed me a gift card to the local bookstore. But there was one person who always made me feel special, my grandmother. She's always treated me differently. When I told her I wanted to study finance, she was thrilled. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Austin," she said. "You'll go far." And now she's insisted on arranging my birthday celebration. She even gave my parents several $1,000s to make it happen. I couldn't believe it. My parents usually brush off my birthdays, but this time they didn't argue. They just took the money and told me to focus on my exams. I overheard Dallas complaining about it. "Why does he get a big party?" she whined. "I could use that money for a trip I've been wanting to take." Grandma shut her down quickly. "Hush now, Dallas. Everyone spoils you as it is. Didn't I just give you 10 grand for rent and you're still living at home?" Dallas went silent after that. I'll admit, a small part of me felt a little smug. So here I am, cramming for my last exam. Tomorrow's the day, and then I'm free. Free to finally have a birthday celebration that's about me, for once. The next day, I walked out of my last exam feeling like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. My classmates were chattering excitedly about their summer plans, but all I could think about was the birthday celebration waiting for me. As I walked back to my dorm, my phone buzzed with messages from friends wishing me an early happy birthday, knowing I'd be heading home soon. It felt good to be remembered, even if they were people I'd only known for a couple of years. "Happy almost birthday!" Denver, my roommate, called as I walked into our shared space. "Ready for the big family shindig?" I nodded, trying to muster up some excitement. "Yeah, should be interesting." Denver raised an eyebrow. "You don't sound too excited. Everything okay?" I sighed, collapsing onto my bed. "It's just my family. They're not exactly the warm and fuzzy type, especially when it comes to me." "But your grandma organized this whole thing, right? That's got to count for something," Denver pointed out. "True," I admitted, my voice softer. "Grandma's always been different. She actually seems to like me." As I packed my backpack for the trip home, a nagging feeling twisted in my gut. It was a mix of hope and dread, hope that for once my birthday would be special, and dread that it would all go wrong. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. My mind kept wandering to what awaited me. Would the house be decorated? Would there be a cake? Would my parents actually look happy to see me? As I walked up the driveway, I took a deep breath. The house looked normal. No balloons, no streamers, nothing to indicate a celebration was about to happen. But maybe they were keeping it all inside, I thought, trying to stay positive. I opened the front door, calling out, "Mom?" Dad, I'm home. The house was quiet, too quiet for a place that was supposed to be prepping for a party. I frowned, dropping my backpack by the door and making my way to the living room. My parents were there, sitting on the couch, looking oddly uncomfortable. There was no sign of any party preparations. Hi, I said, confusion creeping into my voice. Where's all the, birthday stuff? My mom and dad exchanged a glance that made my heart sink. About that, Austin, my dad started, his voice oddly detached. We decided not to organize your birthday party. I blinked. Sure, I had misheard. What, but Grandma gave you money for it? We gave the money to Dallas for her trip, my mom cut in. She and her boyfriend flew to Hawaii a couple of days ago. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my eyes start to sting with tears. You what? But it was for my birthday. Grandma gave it to you for my birthday. My dad shrugged, not meeting my eyes. Dallas needed a vacation, you understand, don't you? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Understand? No, I don't understand. It was supposed to be my birthday party. I invited people. What am I supposed to tell them? We've already taken care of that, my mom said, her tone dismissive. We called everyone and told them you were having problems with college and that the party was canceled. I stood there, shock giving way to anger. You lied to them about me? How could you do this? My dad's face hardened. That's enough, Austin. You need to learn to obey us and stop being so selfish. Selfish? I almost screamed the word. How am I being selfish? It was my birthday, my party. Just then, the front door opened. I turned, hoping it was Dallas back early and feeling guilty. Instead, I saw my grandmother step inside, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. What's going on here? She asked, her voice sharp. Where's the party? I looked at my parents, waiting to see how they'd explain this away. They hesitated, fumbling for words. In that moment, something in me snapped. There is no party, Grandma, I said, my voice shaking. They gave the money to Dallas for a trip to Hawaii instead. The look on my grandmother's face was one I'd never seen before. It was a mix of fury and disappointment, all directed at my parents. Is this true? She demanded. My parents couldn't meet her gaze. Their silence was all the confirmation she needed. Grandma turned to me, her expression softening. Austin, dear, go pack your things. You're coming with me. I didn't need to be told twice. As I rushed to throw some clothes into my backpack, I could hear my grandmother's voice, low and angry, talking to my parents. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. When I came back downstairs, Grandma was waiting by the door. Without a word to my parents, we left the house and got into her car. As we drove away, I finally let the tears fall. 20 years of feeling unloved and unwanted came pouring out. Grandma reached over and patted my hand. Don't you worry, dear, she said, her voice gentle but firm. We'll sort this out. You deserve better than this, and it's high time someone showed you that. Grandma drove us to her house, a beautiful 2-story home on the outskirts of town. As we pulled into the driveway, she turned to me with a determined look in her eyes. This might not be the party you were expecting, Austin, but we're going to celebrate your birthday properly. Once inside, Grandma immediately got on her phone. I watched in amazement as she ordered what sounded like enough food to feed an army, all for rush delivery. I hope you're hungry, she said with a wink as she hung up. We've got quite a feast coming our way. As we waited for the food to arrive, Grandma bustled around the kitchen, pulling out her best china and silverware. I offered to help, but she shooed me away. It's your birthday, dear. You just relax. So I sat at the kitchen table watching her work. After a few minutes of silence, I couldn't hold back anymore. Grandma, I started, my voice small. Why? Why don't they love me? She paused in her preparations, turning to face me with a sad look in her eyes. For a moment, she seemed to be wrestling with something internally. Then she sighed and sat down across from me. Oh, Austin, she said, reaching out to take my hand. I suppose it's time you knew the truth. My heart started racing. The truth about what? Grandma took a deep breath. Your parents, they didn't want you to be born. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs as if I'd been punched. What? They thought Dallas was enough. Grandma continued, her voice gentle but firm. But I convinced them to have you. Your mother, she had a difficult pregnancy and the birth was complicated. She almost died. I felt tears welling up in my eyes again. So it's my fault? No, Grandma said forcefully. No, Austin, it's not your fault at all. These things happen sometimes, but your mother, she tried to avoid you after that, and your father and Dallas followed her lead. I sat there stunned. All these years I'd known something was off, but I had never imagined this. Just then, the doorbell rang. Our food had arrived. As Grandma went to get it, I stayed there, trying to process everything I'd just learned. The next few hours blurred together. Grandma and I devoured an absurd amount of food. She shared stories from her youth, making me laugh despite the heaviness that still hung in my chest. As the night wore on, I began to relax, letting go of the tension for the first time in ages. I finally felt like I could enjoy my birthday. As we were finishing the last of the cake, Grandma's phone rang. She glanced at it, then at me, a glint of mischief dancing in her eyes. "It's your sister," she said. "Shall we see what she has to say?" Curiosity got the better of me. I nodded. Grandma put the phone on speaker. "Hello?" Dallas's voice came through, sounding frantic. "Grandma, why is my card blocked? What's going on?" Grandma's tone was cold, controlled. "Hello, Dallas. I see you've discovered there are consequences for your actions." "What? What actions? What are you talking about?" Dallas's voice was rising in pitch now. "Your behavior and that of your parents has been absolutely shameful," Grandma said, her voice steady but firm. "Taking money meant for your sister's birthday for your own selfish desires? I'm deeply disappointed in you." There was a long pause, then Dallas came back, her anger seeping through. "Oh, come on! Mom and Dad did the right thing giving me that money. Austin doesn't need some big party. You're just a crazy old woman, and who cares about that?" Grandma cut her off, her voice sharp as steel. "I've heard all I need to hear." And with that, she hung up. I stared at her, wide-eyed. "Grandma, did you really block her card?" She nodded, a small, satisfied smile tugging at her lips. "I did, and your parents' account too. It's time they learned to stand on their own 2 feet. As if on cue, the phone rang again. This time, it was my parents. Grandma ignored it, turning back to me as though nothing had just shaken the foundations of my family's finances. "Now then," she said, as casually as if we hadn't just detonated a bombshell. "How about we plan the rest of your birthday week?" The days with Grandma felt like a dream, a stark contrast to the nightmare that had been my birthday up until then. For the first time in forever, I felt truly loved and appreciated. We shopped, visited museums, and just basked in each other's company. But like all good things, it came to an end. Soon, it was time for me to return to my dorm and focus on my summer classes. As I unpacked my bags in my tiny dorm room, my phone buzzed relentlessly. I glanced at it and saw a flood of notifications, missed calls, and messages from my parents in Dallas. With a sigh, I sank onto my bed, scrolling through them. The first message was from my mom. "Austin, you need to talk to your grandmother right now. This is unacceptable." Then, my dad. "We're your parents. You owe us your loyalty. Make her unblock our accounts." Dallas's messages were even worse. "You little brat, is this what you wanted? To ruin everything for us? We're stuck in Hawaii because of you. Fix this now." My hands trembled as I read through them all. The audacity, the nerve they had to demand my help after everything they'd done. It was mind-boggling. I took a deep breath and typed my response. "This is between you and Grandma. I won't get involved. Please don't contact me about this again." I hit send and then blocked their numbers. But the peace didn't last long. They started calling from different numbers, leaving voicemails filled with demands and insults. One particularly nasty voicemail, which I foolishly answered, had my mother's words cutting deeper than any insult could. "You ungrateful little trash," she spat. "I should have never given birth to you. I should have had an abortion instead." That was the last straw. I ended the call and blocked every number they tried to reach me from. Tears streamed down my face as I curled into a ball on my bed, the weight of my mother's words echoing painfully in my mind. Over the next few weeks, I buried myself in my studies, using textbooks and assignments to drown out the pain. Occasionally, I'd call Grandma for comfort, her calm, confident voice grounding me. "How are you holding up, dear?" she'd ask, concern lacing her tone. "I'm okay, Grandma," I'd reply, my voice shaky despite my best efforts. "Just focusing on my classes." "That's my girl," she'd say, pride clear in her voice. "Remember, you're stronger than you know. Don't let them get to you." Her words were a balm to my battered soul, a reminder that I wasn't alone. While my parents and sister had shown their true colors, Grandma had become my rock, my safe harbor in this storm. It was a crisp autumn day, about 2 months after the birthday fiasco. I was walking across campus, my mind preoccupied with an upcoming finance exam, when I heard someone call my name. "Austin!" I turned and froze. There, jogging towards me with a $1,000,000 smile, was Vegas, my sister Dallas's boyfriend, the same Vegas who was with her in Hawaii. He was as handsome as ever, and I couldn't help but notice the envious glances from other girls as he approached. Before I could react, he swept me into a hug. I stood there stiff and confused. As he pulled away, still grinning, "Vegas, what are you doing here?" I managed to ask, acutely aware of the stares we were attracting. "I was hoping to run into you," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Can we talk? There's a cafe just off campus." Every instinct told me to say no, but curiosity got the better of me. "Okay, but I can't stay long." As we settled into a quiet corner of the cafe, Vegas leaned forward, his expression suddenly serious. "Austin, I need to tell you something important." I braced myself, expecting news about my family. What he said next, however, caught me completely off guard. "I want to date you," he blurted out, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I'm going to leave Dallas for you." I stared at him, mouth agape. "Vegas, what are you talking about? You're with my sister." He shook his head, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've been in love with you for a long time, Austin. I was only dating Dallas to be close to you. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true." As he spoke, my mind raced. This didn't make any sense. Vegas had never shown any interest in me before. In fact, he'd always seemed to barely notice my existence when he was around Dallas. Something fishy was definitely going on here. I decided to play along to see where this would lead. Forcing a shy smile, I said, "Wow, Vegas, that's really sweet. I had no idea you felt that way." "Mal." His face lit up, clearly encouraged by my response. "Really? So what do you think? Would you give us a chance?" I pretended to consider it, then said, "This is a lot to take in. Can I have some time to think about it? Maybe we could meet again in a week?" "Of course," Vegas agreed eagerly. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait for you, Austin." After he left, I remained at the cafe, sipping my coffee and turning the bizarre encounter over in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that this sudden declaration of love was connected to my grandmother's decision to cut off my family financially. But how and what did Vegas hope to gain? I had barely stepped out of the cafe, my head still spinning from Vegas's bizarre declaration, when my phone rang. My sister's name flashed on the screen. With a deep sigh, I answered. "You backstabbing little trash!" Dallas's voice screeched through the speaker. "How could you do this to me?" I pulled the phone away from my ear, wincing at her volume. "Dallas, what the hell are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me," you home-wrecking my patience snapped. "Shut up right now and explain what's going on, or I'm hanging up." There was a moment of stunned silence before Dallas spoke again, her voice trembling with rage. "Vegas just dumped me. He said he's going to date you instead. How could you?" I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What, Dallas? I swear I had no idea." "Oh, don't act all innocent," she spat. "I bet you're thrilled about this, aren't you? Well, guess what? He's only after you for Grandma's money." My mind reeled. "Grandma's money? What are you talking about?" Dallas let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, you don't know? Well, let me fill you in, little sister. Grandma's cutting Mom, Dad, and me out of her will. She's leaving everything to you." I leaned against a nearby wall, feeling dizzy. But why would she do that? Because she found out about Mom and Dad's plan, Dallas said, her voice dripping with resentment. They filed to have her declared mentally incompetent so they could take control of her assets. But the old bat caught wind of it somehow. I felt sick. They did what? You heard me, Dallas smeared. And now we're all cut off. Except for you, of course, the perfect little A's. The pieces started to fall into place. So, that's why Vegas suddenly wants to date me. Because of Grandma's money? Bingo, Dallas said with a sickening enthusiasm. Give the girl a prize. God, that vile old woman. I hope she... I cut him off, my voice ice cold. Don't you dare finish that sentence, Dallas. I don't know who's worse in this situation, you and our parents trying to steal from Grandma or Vegas for being a gold-digging snake. Dallas gasped. How dare you? No, how dare you? I shot back, fury boiling over. All of you, you're despicable. I don't want to talk to you anymore, Dallas. Don't ever call me again. I hung up, my hand shaking. The weight of anger and hurt crashed over me like a tidal wave, my chest tightening as tears threatened to spill. How could my family do this? How could they be so cruel, so greedy? With trembling fingers, I dialed Grandma's number. She picked up almost immediately, her voice warm and soothing, like a balm to my shattered nerves. Austin, dear, is everything all right? I inhaled deeply, trying to steady my shaking voice. Grandma, I just found out about, well, everything. The inheritance, Mom and Dad trying to declare you incompetent. Is it true? There was a brief pause, followed by a light chuckle from Grandma. Oh, my dear, I was wondering when you'd hear about all that drama. Yes, it's true. She went on to recount everything, her voice a mix of amusement and disappointment. You should have seen their faces when the commission showed up at my door. I invited them in for tea, answered all their questions, and even did a few Sudoku puzzles to prove my mental acuity. A smile tugged at my lips, imagining the scene. So, what happened? Well, Grandma continued, they left quite satisfied that I was of sound mind. Your parents' ridiculous claim was rejected, of course. After that, I had no choice but to protect my assets and you from their greed. I've left them the house, but the rest, well, that's all going to you, my dear. I was stunned. Grandma, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Austin. Just promise me you'll use it wisely. I want you to take over the company one day to build on what I've created. I promise, Grandma. I won't let you down. After that conversation, I threw myself into my studies, pouring everything I had into my future. The family I had once tried so hard to impress became strangers. I blocked their numbers and ignored their attempts to reach out. They had shown their true colors, and I wanted nothing more to do with them. A week after my conversation with Vegas, he came back just as he'd promised. But when his confident smile met the coldness in my eyes, it faltered. Austin, he began, reaching for my hand. I pulled away sharply. Save it, Vegas, I spat. I know all about your little scheme. You and my sister deserve each other. You're both vile and mercenary. His facade crumbled in an instant. You're making a big mistake, Shake, he sneered. You're a fool to refuse a guy like me. I couldn't help but laugh. A guy like you? A gold digger with no moral compass? No thanks. I think I'll pass. As he stormed off, a heavy weight lifted from my shoulders. I was free from the manipulation, the lies, the constant feeling of inadequacy that had weighed me down for so long. Over the next few months, Grandma took me under her wing. She taught me everything I needed to know about running a successful company. We spent weekends poring over financial reports, discussing business strategies, and planning for the future. You have a good head for business, Austin, she'd often say, beaming with pride. You're going to do great things. For the first time in my life, I felt truly valued, truly loved. The pain of losing my parents and sister still lingered, but it was overshadowed by the joy of finally finding my place in the world. What do you do when the people you've spent your whole life trying to impress finally show their true colors? When the family you thought would always have your back turns out to be nothing more than a group of selfish, manipulative people, Austin's journey is one of realization of finally seeing that the love and approval he so desperately craved from his family was never genuine. His birthday, which should have been a celebration of his life and achievements, became the final straw. His parents chose Dallas's trip over his special day, lying to everyone and dismissing him as always. But when Austin learned the truth from Grandma that she had protected him, leaving everything to him, he finally saw his worth, not through their eyes, but his own. And when Vegas came knocking, trying to manipulate Austin just like the rest of them, he saw through the facade. No longer the naive boy who was desperate for their love, Austin knew exactly what he had to do. He cut them off. And for the first time in his life, he was free. Now, Austin is not only free from his family's grasp, but is also building a future that's entirely his own. One where his grandmother's legacy will live on through him. So, here's the question. Would you have walked away from family who treated you like this? How far would you go to protect your own peace? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
The letter fluttered to the floor, the words searing into my mind like a branding iron. Lydia, you have a sister. My mother-in-law's voice echoed hollowly as I stared at her in disbelief. Robert shifted uncomfortably beside me on the plush sofa. Greta, what are you talking about? She clasped her hands, her eyes downcast. I should have told you both sooner. Years ago, before we met, Robert. She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging heavily in the air. A sick feeling twisted in my gut as the truth dawned on me. Robert had a child from another relationship, a daughter he had never mentioned, a secret buried so deep that even I was oblivious. Who is she? I demanded, my voice trembling with a potent mix of shock and betrayal. Robert's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Her name is Emma. She's 16 now. 16 years old. The realization slammed into me like a freight train. This girl had existed all this time, mere miles away from us, and we knew nothing about her. Greta reached out, her papery skin brushing my arm. I'm sorry, dear. We wanted to protect you from... I jerked away from her touch, anger flaring hot. Protect me? By lying all these years? Robert ran a hand through his tousled brown hair, agitation etched into his features. Lydia, please. Let me explain. But I had heard enough. Snatching my purse from the side table, I stormed out of the living room and into the hallway, the plush carpet muffling my hurried footsteps. Lydia, wait! Robert called after me, but I kept moving, yanking open the front door and bursting out onto the sun-drenched porch. The peaceful tree-lined street mocked me with its tranquility as I paced back and forth, drawing in deep, shuddering breaths. How could he have done this? After everything we'd been through together, building our life, our family. The crunch of gravel underfoot made me spin around. Robert stood at the edge of the driveway, hands shoved into his pockets, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Talk to me, he pleaded, his hazel eyes boring into mine. Don't shut me out, not now. I opened my mouth, a torrent of recriminations ready to spill forth, but then I caught a glimpse of the diamond solitaire on my left hand, sparkling in the sunlight. A reminder of the vows we had made, the life we had promised to share. Drawing a steadying breath, I met his gaze levelly. Then you'd better start explaining. All of it, Robert. No more lies, no more secrets. I deserve to know the truth. His shoulders sagged, and he nodded slowly. You're right. You do. I'll tell you everything, Lydia. I swear it. As I stood there, rooted on that very porch where we had welcomed our firstborn son into the world, I could feel the landscape of our lives shifting irrevocably. The solid ground was crumbling beneath my feet, and I had no choice but to wade into the unknown, seeking answers and bracing for the impact of long-buried secrets. The moving truck rumbled up the driveway, its bulky form casting a long shadow across the freshly paved asphalt. I watched from the living room window as the burly movers unloaded box after box, their grunts carrying through the glass pane. Are you sure about this, Greta? I asked, turning to face my mother-in-law. She stood in the middle of the room, surveying the space with a critical eye. Of course, dear. She patted my arm in a placating gesture. With Emma coming to live with us, you'll need all the help you can get. My jaw clenched at her condescending tone, as if I couldn't handle my own family affairs without her interference. The front door swung open, and Robert stepped inside, his brow furrowed. The movers are just about finished unloading Greta's things. Excellent, Greta declared, clasping her hands together. Now, where should we set up my bedroom? I opened my mouth to protest, but Robert cut me off with a pleading look. Mom, are you sure you don't want to reconsider staying in your own place? We've got plenty of room here, but... Nonsense, Greta scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. I'm not getting any younger, and with my health issues, it's best if I'm close by. You'll need me around, especially with a teenage girl in the house. A flicker of irritation crossed Robert's face, but he remained silent. I knew he was torn, caught between his loyalty to me and his sense of duty toward his mother. The sound of footsteps on the porch steps made us all turn. A tall, slender girl with long, dark hair stepped into the entryway, her gaze flitting nervously around the room. Emma, Robert said, his expression softening. Come on in, sweetheart. Greta rushed forward, enveloping the girl in a tight embrace. My dear granddaughter, welcome to your new home. Emma stiffened, her eyes finding mine over Greta's shoulder. I offered her a tentative smile, trying to convey a sense of warmth and reassurance. As Greta released her, Emma smoothed her hands over her jeans, her shoulders hunched inward. Hi, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. It's so wonderful to have you here, Greta gushed, taking Emma's hands in her own. We're going to be one big, happy family. A knot formed in my stomach at her words. Happy family? With the way things were unfolding, that seemed like a distant dream. Robert cleared his throat, stepping forward to place a gentle hand on Emma's back. Why don't I show you to your room? Get you settled in? Emma nodded, relief flickering across her features as she followed him out of the living room and down the hallway. Greta watched them go, a self-satisfied smile playing on her lips. Then, as if sensing my gaze, she turned to face me, her expression hardening. Don't worry, Lydia, she said, her voice taking on a steely edge. I'll make sure everything runs smoothly around here. You can count on me. A shiver ran down my spine at the glint in her eyes. In that moment, I knew Greta's presence in our home was about more than just helping out. She had an agenda, one that threatened to upend the delicate balance I had so carefully cultivated. As I stood there, surrounded by the trappings of the life Robert and I had built together, a sense of dread washed over me. The battle lines were being drawn, and I would have to fight to protect everything I held dear. The days bled into weeks, and a tense undercurrent rippled through our household. Emma remained withdrawn, speaking only when spoken to, and retreating to her room at every opportunity. Greta, on the other hand, seemed to relish her new role as matriarch, inserting herself into every aspect of our lives. Lydia, dear, have you thought about signing Emma up for extracurriculars? She asked one morning over breakfast, her tone saccharine sweet. A girl her age needs structure and activities to keep her grounded. I exchanged a glance with Robert, who shrugged almost imperceptibly. I was going to discuss some options with her, I replied, keeping my voice level, but I wanted to give her some time to adjust first. Greta tsked disapprovingly. Well, don't wait too long. You know how teenagers can be, idle hands and all that. Emma hunched lower in her chair, her gaze fixed on her plate. My heart ached for her. This girl thrust into our lives with no say in the matter. Later that day, as I was folding laundry in the living room, Greta swept in, her footsteps purposeful. I've been thinking, she announced without preamble. Emma could use a feminine influence in her life, a strong role model to guide her. I paused, a shirt dangling from my hands as I eyed her warily. I'm her mother now, Greta. I think I can handle that role just fine. She waved a dismissive hand. Of course. But you have to admit you're a bit unconventional, a modern woman focused on your career. Her gaze drifted pointedly to the nursing textbooks stacked on the end table. Anger flared hot in my chest, but I bit back a retort, reminding myself to choose my battles carefully. Greta seemed to sense my irritation, for she softened her tone. I only want what's best for Emma, she said, resting a hand on my arm. You understand that, don't you, dear? Before I could respond, the sound of footsteps drew our attention. Emma hovered in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Everything okay? I asked, offering her a reassuring smile. She opened her mouth, then seemed to think better of it, shaking her head. "Never mind," she muttered, turning on her heel and retreating back down the hallway. Greta watched her go, a calculating look in her eyes. "Like I said, Lydia, she needs guidance, and I intend to provide it, whether you like it or not." A shiver ran down my spine at the thinly veiled threat in her words. In that moment I knew. Greta wasn't just overstepping boundaries. She was deliberately driving a wedge between Emma and me, undermining my authority at every turn. As I stood there, clutching the crumpled shirt in my hands, a hard knot of determination formed in my gut. I wouldn't let Greta win, not without a fight. This was my family, my home, and I would do whatever it took to protect it. The sound of shattering glass jolted me awake. I sat bolt upright in bed, my heart pounding as I strained to make out the muffled voices drifting from downstairs. Robert stirred beside me, his brow furrowed. "What was that?" he mumbled groggily. I threw off the covers, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Stay here," I whispered, sliding out of bed and grabbing my robe from the foot of the mattress. Creeping down the hallway, I could make out Greta's shrill tones, punctuated by Emma's sullen replies. As I reached the living room, the scene that unfolded made my blood run cold. Shards of broken ceramic littered the floor, the remnants of a once pristine vase. Emma stood in the center of the chaos, her shoulders hunched defensively as Greta loomed over her, fury etched into every line of her face. "You clumsy, foolish girl!" Greta raged, jabbing a finger toward the shattered pieces. "Do you have any idea how much that cost? How precious it was to me?" Emma flinched, her gaze downcast. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." "Sorry?" Greta cut her off with a harsh laugh. "Sorry doesn't fix anything, does it?" Anger flared hot in my chest, and I surged forward, planting myself between them. "That's enough, Greta," I snapped, my voice laced with steel. "Leave her alone." Greta's eyes widened in outrage, her mouth working soundlessly for a moment before she found her voice. "How dare you take her side? This is exactly why she needs discipline, Lydia. You're far too soft on her." "She's a child," I shot back, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "And she made a mistake, one that doesn't warrant this kind of reaction." Greta opened her mouth, no doubt to unleash another tirade, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. "No, I'm done listening to you berate her, undermine me at every turn. This is my home, Greta, my family, and I won't have you treating Emma this way anymore." For a long, tense moment, we locked eyes, a silent battle of wills playing out between us. Then, with a derisive snort, Greta spun on her heel and stormed out of the room, her slippered feet slapping against the hardwood floors. Silence descended, thick and oppressive. I turned to face Emma, my anger melting into concern as I took in her pale, stricken expression. "Are you okay?" I asked gently, reaching out to touch her arm. She flinched away from my touch, her eyes glittering with unshed tears. "Why did you do that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to defend me." My heart clenched at the raw vulnerability in her words. This poor girl, so accustomed to being cast aside, neglected, of course she wouldn't understand someone standing up for her. "Yes, I did," I said firmly, holding her gaze. "Emma, you're part of this family now, whether you believe it or not, and I'll always have your back, no matter what." A flicker of emotion crossed her features, there and gone in an instant. Then, with a jerky nod, she turned and fled the room, leaving me standing amid the shattered remains of Greta's precious vase. As I stared at the broken pieces, a grim sense of determination settled over me. This was just the beginning. Greta's true colors were starting to show, and I knew her actions would only escalate from here. But I was ready, prepared to fight for what was mine with every ounce of strength I possessed. The battle lines had been drawn, and there would be no turning back. The envelope sat innocuously on the kitchen counter, its contents promising to upend everything I thought I knew. With trembling fingers, I tore it open, my breath catching in my throat as I scanned the documents inside. Pages upon pages of financial records detailing Greta's assets and investments, all meticulously organized in her familiar looping script. At first glance, it seemed like a straightforward portfolio, the kind of paperwork one would expect from a widow managing her late husband's estate. But then I saw it, a series of notations and calculations, outlining what appeared to be a plan to liquidate her holdings and funnel the proceeds into a new trust. a trust with both her name and Robert's listed as beneficiaries. My hands went numb, the papers fluttering to the countertop as the full weight of Greta's machinations slammed into me. This wasn't just about asserting control over the household. She was positioning herself to take control of our finances, our future. The sound of footsteps made me whirl around. Emma hovered in the doorway, her brow furrowed as she took in my stricken expression. "What's wrong?" she asked hesitantly. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How could I explain the depths of Greta's betrayal, the insidious way she had wormed her way into our lives under the guise of family? Scooping up the papers, I brushed past Emma and headed for the living room, my steps fueled by a simmering fury. Greta looked up from her knitting as I entered, her eyes narrowing at my thunderous expression. "Lydia, dear, whatever is the matter?" I flung the documents onto the coffee table, watching as they scattered across the polished surface. "This is the matter, Greta," I bit out, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Your little scheme to bleed us dry and take everything we've worked for." Comprehension dawned on her features, swiftly replaced by a mask of indignation. "How dare you accuse me of such things?" she blustered, rising to her feet. "I'm simply trying to secure my future, ensure I'm taken care of in my old age." "By stealing from your own son?" I shook my head in disgust. "You're unbelievable, Greta. Utterly shameless." Her eyes flashed dangerously. "Watch your tone with me, girl. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family." "Sacrificed?" The word tasted bitter on my tongue. "All you've done is take, and manipulate and undermine everyone around you for your own selfish gain." Greta opened her mouth, no doubt to unleash another torrent of vitriol, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it. I'm done listening to your lies." I turned on my heel, my heart pounding in my ears. "This ends now, Greta. One way or another, it all ends." As I stalked away, leaving her sputtering in outrage behind me, a grim sense of determination settled over me. Greta had shown her true colors, and there was no going back. No more playing by her rules, no more letting her run roughshod over my life. It was time to fight back, to protect what was mine at all costs. The gloves were finally off, and I intended to emerge victorious, no matter how high the stakes. I paced the length of the living room, my footsteps muffled by the plush carpet as I waited for Robert to return home. The damning evidence of Greta's schemes lay strewn across the coffee table, a stark reminder of the battle lines that had been drawn. The sound of the front door opening made me whirl around. Robert stepped inside, his brow furrowing as he took in my tense posture. "Lydia? What's going on?" Without a word, I gestured toward the papers scattered across the table. He crossed the room, his frown deepening as he scanned the documents. "These are Mom's financial records," he murmured, glancing up at me with a puzzled expression. "Why are you looking at?" His voice trailed off as realization dawned, his face paling. "Oh God, she's trying to take everything, isn't she?" I nodded grimly. "It's all right there, Robert. Her plan to liquidate her assets and set up a new trust with both of your names on it." He sank onto the couch, cradling his head in his hands. "I can't believe she would do this. My own mother." Sympathy tugged at my heart, but I tamped it down, hardening my resolve. "Believe it," I said, my voice steely. "Greta has shown her true colors, and we can't afford to be blind to them any longer." Robert looked up, his eyes haunted. "What are we going to do?" I drew in a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. "We're going to stop her once and for all. But I need you with me on this, Robert. No more wavering, no more divided loyalties. It's us against her now." He held my gaze for a long moment, conflict flickering across his features. Then, with a slow nod, he straightened his shoulders. "You're right. I'm with you, Lydia. All the way." A sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. United, we stood a chance against Greta's machinations. Divided, she would surely tear us apart. Over the next few days, we strategized, poring over the financial documents and mapping out our counterattack. I knew we had to move swiftly before Greta could make her next move. Finally, the plan was in place. I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders as I strode into the living room, where Greta sat knitting by the window. "Greta," I said, my voice ringing with authority, "we need to talk." She looked up, her eyes narrowing at my tone. "About what, dear?" "About your little scheme to take over this household and everything we've worked for." I gestured toward the documents arrayed on the coffee table. The game is up, Greta. We know exactly what you've been plotting. For a moment she remained impassive, her expression carefully blank. Then slowly, a sly smile curved her lips. Well, well, she purred, setting aside her knitting needles. I see you've been a busy little bee, haven't you? Robert stepped forward, his jaw set in a hard line. It's over, Mom. We're not going to let you manipulate us anymore. Greta's eyes flashed with contempt as she rose to her feet, drawing herself up to her full height. You ungrateful boy, she spat. After everything I've done for this family, you turn on me like this? I held up a hand, cutting off her tirade. Enough, Greta. We're done playing by your rules. From now on, things are going to be different around here, or you can pack your bags and leave. Her gaze shifted to me, her lip curling in a sneer. Is that a threat, Lydia? It's a promise, I shot back, holding her stare without flinching. The choice is yours, but make no mistake, I will protect what's mine, no matter what it takes. For a long, tense moment, we remained locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, with a derisive snort, Greta turned on her heel and swept from the room, her slippered feet slapping against the hardwood floors. As her footsteps faded, I exhaled a long, shuddering breath, the adrenaline ebbing from my veins. Robert stepped forward, wrapping his arms around me in a fierce embrace. Thank you, he murmured into my hair, for standing up for us, for our family. I leaned into his warmth, drawing strength from his solid presence. The war was far from over, but for now we had claimed a small victory, and I intended to savor it, because the real battle was still to come. The dining room table groaned under the weight of the lavish spread I had prepared, a feast fit for a celebration, though the atmosphere was anything but festive. Tension hung thick in the air as our extended family trickled in, casting furtive glances my way. Robert's Aunt Marjorie was the first to speak up, her brow furrowed in concern. Lydia, dear, what's this all about? Your message sounded rather urgent. I exchanged a loaded glance with Robert, who gave me an imperceptible nod. Taking a steadying breath, I turned to face our assembled relatives. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice ringing with steely determination. I know this was somewhat last minute, but there's an important matter we need to address as a family. Greta shifted in her seat, her eyes narrowing. And what matter would that be exactly? I met her challenging stare head-on, refusing to be cowed. Your relentless attempts to undermine my authority in this household, and your underhanded schemes to take control of our finances for your own gain. A collective gasp rippled through the room as I laid out the evidence, the damning paperwork detailing Greta's meticulous plans. Shock and disbelief flickered across the faces of our relatives as the truth came to light. Greta, for her part, remained outwardly impassive, but I could see the fury simmering in her eyes, the muscle twitching in her jaw. How dare you accuse me of such things? She spat, rising to her feet and planting her hands on the table with a resounding thud. I've only ever had this family's best interests at heart. By trying to bleed us dry? I shot back, refusing to back down. By manipulating and deceiving us at every turn? That's not love, Greta. That's greed, plain and simple. Her face contorted with rage, and for a moment I thought she might lunge across the table at me. But then a tremor ran through her frame and she seemed to deflate, sinking back into her chair. You ungrateful, selfish girl, she hissed, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. After everything I've sacrificed. A heavy silence descended, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Our relatives shifted uncomfortably, their gazes darting between Greta and me, unsure of where to place their loyalties. Finally, Aunt Marjorie cleared her throat, her expression one of profound sadness. Greta, is it true? Did you really do these things? Greta's jaw worked soundlessly for a moment, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Then, with a jerky nod, she seemed to crumple in on herself, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She whispered, her voice barely audible, "It's all true." A collective exhalation swept through the room, as if everyone had been holding their breath. I felt a surge of vindication, tempered by an unexpected twinge of pity for the broken woman before me. Robert reached out, his hand finding mine and giving it a gentle squeeze. A silent show of support and solidarity, reminding me that we were in this together, united against the threat that had nearly torn our family apart. As the shock wore off and our relatives began to process the revelations, one by one, they turned to face Greta, their expressions ranging from disappointment to outright disgust. And in that moment, I knew the battle had been won. Greta's web of lies and manipulation had finally unraveled, leaving her exposed and powerless in the face of the family she had sought to control. It was a hollow victory, tinged with the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. But as I looked around the table at the faces of those I loved most, I knew it was a sacrifice worth making to protect what truly mattered. No matter the cost, I would always fight for my family. The gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of freshly turned earth as I knelt in the garden, my fingers sinking into the rich soil. Beside me, Emma crouched, carefully arranging a cluster of vibrant petunias in the raised bed we had constructed. "Like this, Mom?" she asked, glancing up at me with those wide, earnest eyes that still made my heart clench with a bittersweet pang. A year ago, I never could have imagined hearing those words from her lips. The simple endearment, a reminder of how far we'd come, of the battles we'd fought, and the wounds we'd healed. "Perfect," I murmured, reaching out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. Her smile bloomed, radiant and unguarded, and in that moment, the weight of our shared past seemed to lift, if only for an instant. The crunch of footsteps on the patio drew my gaze upward. Robert approached, a tray laden with glasses of lemonade balanced in his hands. His expression softened as he took in the scene before him, and I felt a surge of love and gratitude for this man who had stood by my side through it all. "Thought you two could use a refreshment break," he said, setting the tray down and sinking onto the edge of the garden bed. Emma immediately reached for a glass, gulping down the tart liquid with unabashed enthusiasm. I chuckled, shaking my head in fond exasperation before claiming a glass of my own. As I sipped the cool beverage, my gaze drifted across the meticulously tended flower beds and neatly trimmed hedges that bordered our property. This sanctuary, our home. It had nearly been torn from our grasp by the very person who should have cherished it most. Greta's absence hung like a specter, her manipulations and betrayals casting a long shadow over the hard-won peace we had finally achieved. But in the end, her greed and selfishness had been her undoing, driving her from our lives in a blaze of bitter recriminations. "You okay?" Robert's voice, soft and concerned, drew me from my reverie. I mustered a smile, reaching out to give his hand a reassuring squeeze. "I'm fine, just thinking about how far we've come." His expression sobered and he nodded slowly. "It hasn't been easy, has it? But we made it through together." Emma set down her empty glass, her brow furrowing as she studied our somber expressions. "Are you talking about Greta again?" The question, posed with the guileless candor of youth, struck a chord deep within me. So much had been sacrificed, so many battles waged, all to protect this remarkable young woman from the toxic influence of my former mother-in-law. "Yes," I said simply, holding her gaze. "But that's all in the past now. Greta made her choices, and we made ours to stand together as a family, no matter what." Emma's features softened, and she inched closer, resting her head on my shoulder in a rare display of affection. "I'm glad you did. I don't know where I'd be without you guys." A lump formed in my throat as I wrapped an arm around her slender frame, drawing her close. Robert reached out, his calloused palm cradling my cheek as he leaned in to press a tender kiss to my forehead. In that moment, surrounded by the vibrant blooms and the ones I loved most, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them united. A family bound not by blood, but by an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of adversity. We had won our battle against Greta's toxic influence, emerging battered but unbroken. And as I looked into the hopeful faces of my husband and daughter, I silently vowed that nothing would ever threaten the sanctuary we had created, the home we had fought so fiercely to preserve. This was our new beginning, our chance to heal and grow, and I intended to nurture it with the same fierce devotion I had shown in defending it from those who sought to destroy us. "Edith, I can't believe you did this." My mother-in-law's voice was sharp, her face a mask of disbelief. I stood there, clutching the letter that revealed Mark's secret life. My world shattered in that instant. "What is the meaning of this?" Gloria demanded, snatching the letter from my trembling hands. Before I could respond, Mark stormed into the room, his expression thunderous. "What's going on here?" I swallowed hard, my throat constricting with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark's eyes narrowed. "None of your business, Edith," he retorted, turning away. Gloria thrust the letter at him. "Explain this, Mark. Your wife has uncovered your little secret." Mark's jaw tightened as he scanned the contents. "It's not what you think," he muttered, refusing to meet my gaze. "Not what I think," I echoed, my voice rising. "This letter details your affair with Michelle, a woman half my age." "Watch your tone, Edith," Gloria snapped. "This is a family matter." I whirled on her, my composure cracking. "A family matter? While your son was gallivanting around with his mistress, I was here, holding everything together," Mark scoffed. "Don't act so innocent. You've been a cold, distant wife for years. Because you've been emotionally absent." I shot back. "Late nights, unexplained absences. It all makes sense now." Gloria stepped between us, her eyes flashing. "Enough of this nonsense. We will not let this ruin our family's reputation." I stared at her, incredulous. "Reputation? Your son has been carrying on an affair, and you're worried about reputation?" "You've always been a poor excuse for a wife," Gloria sniped. No wonder Mark strayed. "Yet I'm the one holding this family together," I replied calmly, my anger hardening into resolve. Mark laughed bitterly. "Is that what you think? You're delusional, Edith." I met his gaze, unflinching. "No, Mark. I'm finally seeing clearly, and I'm done living a lie." Gloria's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare leave this family." I straightened my shoulders, a newfound strength surging through me. "Watch me." Turning on my heel, I strode out of the room, leaving my shattered marriage behind. It was time to start living for myself and my son, Peter. No more lies, no more toxic relationships. A new chapter was beginning, and I was ready to embrace it, come what may. As I lay in bed that night, the weight of Mark's betrayal pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket. Memories of our once happy marriage flickered through my mind, taunting me with what could have been. How did we reach this point? I thought bitterly. The signs had been there all along. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the growing emotional distance. But I had chosen to turn a blind eye, desperate to preserve the illusion of a perfect family. Gloria's words echoed in my head, each one a dagger to my heart. "You've always been a poor excuse for a wife. No wonder Mark strayed." Tears stung my eyes as I recalled the countless sacrifices I had made for this family, putting my own dreams and aspirations aside to be the dutiful wife and mother. And what did I have to show for it? A cheating husband and a manipulative mother-in-law who delighted in twisting the knife deeper. A soft knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. "Mom?" Peter's voice was tentative, laced with concern. I hastily wiped my eyes and cleared my throat. "Come in, sweetheart." Peter slipped into the room, his brow furrowed. "Are you okay? I heard shouting earlier." Mustering a brave smile, I patted the bed beside me. "It's nothing for you to worry about, honey. Just some grown-up issues." He settled next to me, his eyes searching mine. "Is it about Dad? I know things haven't been great between you two lately." I sighed, my heart aching at the thought of shattering his innocence. "Your father and I are going through a difficult time. Yes, but we'll figure it out one way or another." Peter nodded solemnly. "I just want us to be a family again, like we used to be." His words pierced my soul. How could I tell him that the family he knew was already gone, torn apart by Mark's selfish actions? I pulled him into a tight embrace, blinking back fresh tears. "I love you, Peter," I whispered fiercely. "No matter what happens, remember that." He hugged me back, his skinny arms wrapping around me with a strength that belied his age. "I love you too, Mom. We'll get through this together." As I held my son close, a newfound determination surged within me. I would not let Mark's betrayal define us. I would not allow Gloria's toxic influence to poison our lives any longer. It was time to take control, to forge a new path, one where Peter and I could find true happiness, free from the shackles of a broken marriage and toxic family dynamics. The road ahead would be difficult, but with my son by my side, I knew I had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. This was just the beginning of our journey towards healing and redemption. And I would stop at nothing to ensure that Peter and I emerged from this storm stronger and more resilient than ever before. The next morning, I steeled myself for another confrontation with Mark. As I entered the kitchen, he was already there, sipping coffee and reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm. Mark glanced up, his expression bored. "About what, Edith?" I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to hurl the nearest object at his smug face. "About your little secret, the affair you've been carrying on behind my back." He snorted derisively. "So you found out. Big deal. It's not like we've had a real marriage for years." My jaw dropped at his callous words. "How can you say that? I've devoted my life to this family, to being a good wife and mother." "And a lousy job you've done," Gloria chimed in, sweeping into the room. "If you had been a better wife, Mark wouldn't have strayed." I rounded on her, my temper flaring. "Stay out of this, Gloria. This is between me and your son." "Like hell it is," she snapped. "This involves my family, and I won't let you ruin it with your dramatics." Mark set down his coffee mug, his eyes narrowing. "Enough of this. I'm leaving for a week, Edith. Try not to mess things up while I'm gone." I stared at him, incredulous. "You're leaving? Just like that?" He shrugged, already gathering his things. "I need a break from all this nonsense. Don't wait up." As he brushed past me, I felt a surge of anger and despair. How could he be so callous, so dismissive of our marriage, our family? And yet, a part of me couldn't help but feel relieved at the prospect of a temporary reprieve from his toxic presence. Gloria fixed me with a steely glare. "You'd better not do anything rash while he's gone, Edith. This family has a reputation to uphold." I met her gaze, my resolve hardening. "Don't worry, Gloria. I can manage without him just fine." As Mark's car pulled out of the driveway, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I wouldn't have to walk on eggshells, constantly trying to appease his whims and Gloria's demands. Peter emerged from his room, his brow furrowed. "Is Dad really leaving?" I pulled him into a reassuring hug. "It's just for a week, honey. We'll be okay." His arms tightened around me. "I don't like it when you two fight." My heart clenched at the sadness in his voice. "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes grown-ups have to work through their problems in their own way." As I held my son close, I silently vowed to protect him from the toxic environment that had consumed our family for far too long. This week would be a chance for us to breathe, to remember what it felt like to live without the constant weight of Mark's emotional absence and Gloria's manipulative interference. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, this temporary separation would be the catalyst for something more permanent. A chance for me to finally break free and build the life Peter and I deserved, far away from the toxicity that had plagued us for so long. The first few days of Mark's absence were a welcome reprieve, but my relief was short-lived. On the third day, Peter came down with a high fever, and my world was thrown into chaos once again. "It's a fever, Mom, but he's burning up. I don't know what to do." I sobbed into the phone, cradling my ailing son in my arms. "We're on our way, darling. Hang in there." My mother's soothing voice came through the line. I tried my best to keep Peter comfortable, but his condition only seemed to worsen. Gloria hovered nearby, her disapproving glares piercing through me like daggers. "This is what happens when you don't have a proper man around the house," she sniffed, her words dripping with disdain. I bit back a retort, too exhausted and worried to engage in her toxic games. All that mattered was getting Peter the help he needed. When my parents finally arrived, my mother swooped in like a guardian angel, taking charge of the situation with a calm efficiency that I envied. "Let me take a look at him, sweetheart," she murmured, gently brushing Peter's sweat-soaked hair from his forehead. My father pulled me into a comforting embrace, his eyes filled with concern. "How are you holding up, Edith?" I shook my head, fighting back tears. "I'm at my wit's end, Dad. Mark's gone, and Gloria's been no help at all. I don't know what to do." Gloria scoffed from the corner. "If you had been a better wife, none of this would be happening." My father's eyes flashed with anger. "That's enough, Gloria. Can't you see my daughter is struggling?" "Where's your compassion?" "Compassion?" Gloria sneered. She brought this upon herself by driving Mark away. I flinched as if struck, her words cutting deeper than any physical blow. Was she right? Had my confrontation with Mark about his affair pushed him to abandon us in our time of need? My mother's voice cut through the tension, her tone firm but gentle. "Edith, why don't you come and sit with Peter for a while? I'll make us all some tea." Grateful for the reprieve, I settled beside my son's bed, gently stroking his flushed cheek. His eyes fluttered open, and he managed a weak smile. "Mom, I'm sorry for causing so much trouble," he whispered. My heart broke at his words. "Oh, honey, you have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who's sorry for letting things get so out of hand." Peter's brow furrowed. "Is it because of Dad? I know you two haven't been getting along." I swallowed hard, unsure of how much to reveal. "Your father and I are going through some difficult times, yes. But that's not your fault, sweetheart. You're the one thing in my life that brings me joy." His small hand found mine, and he gave it a gentle squeeze. "I love you, Mom. We'll get through this together." In that moment, my son's unwavering love and strength filled me with a renewed sense of purpose. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, I would fight tooth and nail to protect him from the toxicity that had plagued our family for far too long. As my mother returned with a tray of steaming tea, I met her gaze with a newfound determination. With her and my father's support, I knew I had the strength to weather any storm, even one as tempestuous as the one brewing between Mark, Gloria, and me. Just when I thought the storm had passed, the phone rang, shattering the fragile peace we had found. My heart raced as I answered, bracing myself for more bad news. "Edith, there's been an accident. You need to come to the hospital," the voice on the other end urged. My blood ran cold. What happened? Is it Peter? No, it's Mark. He was in a car accident. Relief and anger flooded through me in equal measure. Relief that my son was safe, but anger that Mark's recklessness had once again disrupted our lives. "What happened?" I asked, my voice trembling. There was a pause, and then the caller spoke the words that would change everything. "Mark was with another woman." The world seemed to spin as the weight of those words sank in. His affair, the secret he had so carefully guarded, was now exposed for all to see. I felt a twisted sense of vindication, knowing that his lies had finally caught up with him. "I'll be right there," I managed, hanging up the phone. My parents exchanged worried glances, sensing the shift in my demeanor. "Edith, what's going on?" my mother asked gently. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Mark was in an accident. He was with his mistress." Gloria's face drained of color, her usual haughty expression replaced by one of shock and dismay. For once she was speechless. My father's brow furrowed. "Are you all right, sweetheart? Do you want us to come with you?" I shook my head, a newfound determination surging through me. "No, Dad. This is something I need to handle on my own." As I made my way to the hospital, a strange sense of calm washed over me. The secrets, the lies, the betrayal. It was all out in the open now. Mark had no more cards to play, no more excuses to hide behind. When I arrived at his room, the sight of him lying there, battered and vulnerable, should have filled me with pity. Instead, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, knowing that he was finally facing the consequences of his actions. "Edith," he croaked, his eyes widening as I approached his bedside. "Don't bother, Mark," I said, holding up a hand to silence him. "I know everything. Your little secret is out." He flinched, his gaze dropping in shame. For once he had no snide remarks, no dismissive comments to deflect the truth. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Now, we face the reality of our situation. No more lies, no more secrets. It's time to decide what we really want." Mark's eyes met mine, a flicker of defiance still burning within them. "And what if I don't want to let you go?" I held his gaze, my resolve unwavering. "That's not your decision to make anymore, Mark. You lost that right the moment you betrayed our marriage." As the weight of my words settled over him, I felt a sense of power, a newfound strength that had been buried for far too long. The tables had turned, and for once, I was the one in control. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would no longer be a victim of Mark's selfish actions or Gloria's toxic manipulations. It was time to take back my life, to fight for the happiness and peace that had eluded me for far too long. And as I looked into Mark's defeated eyes, I knew that this time I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The hospital room was thick with tension as I faced Mark, his battered form a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. For once he seemed subdued, unable to deflect the harsh reality that had come crashing down upon us. "So, this is it, Mark," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil raging within me. "We're done. I held out the divorce papers, the weight of their implications heavy in my hands. This was the moment I had both dreaded and longed for, the chance to finally sever the toxic ties that had bound us for far too long. Mark's eyes widened, a flicker of defiance still burning within them. "You wouldn't dare," he growled, his words laced with a familiar arrogance. I met his gaze, unflinching. "Watch me." As he stared at the papers, his bravado seemed to falter, replaced by a rare glimpse of vulnerability. For a fleeting moment, I almost felt pity for him. Almost. "After everything we've been through, you're just going to throw it all away?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that echoed through the sterile room. "Everything we've been through? You mean the years of emotional neglect, the constant disrespect, the lies and betrayal?" Mark flinched, his eyes dropping to the stark white sheets that covered his battered form. "You did this, Mark," I continued, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pent-up frustration. "You destroyed our marriage with your selfish actions, your complete disregard for our family." His jaw clenched, but he remained silent, unable to deflect the truth that hung heavy in the air between us. "I gave you everything," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I put my dreams aside, sacrificed my own happiness, all for the sake of our family. And how did you repay me? By carrying on an affair with a woman half my age, flaunting your infidelity for the world to see." Mark opened his mouth, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Don't bother making excuses, Mark. It's too late for that. The damage is done, and there's no going back." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Sign the papers, Mark. It's over." His eyes met mine, a flicker of defiance still burning within their depths. "And if I refuse?" I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that echoed through the sterile room. "Then you'll be left with nothing. No wife, no family, no reputation. Just the consequences of your own selfish actions." As the weight of my words settled over him, I could see the fight draining from his eyes, replaced by a weary resignation. "Fine," he muttered, reaching for the pen beside his bed. "Have it your way, Edith." With a shaky hand, he scrawled his signature across the papers, sealing our fate with a few strokes of ink. As I gathered the documents, a sense of finality washed over me. It was done. The chapter of my life that had been defined by Mark's toxic presence was finally closed. "I hope it was worth it, Mark," I said, my voice laced with a mixture of sadness and triumph. "Because from this moment on, you're on your own." Turning on my heel, I strode out of the room, leaving him to grapple with the wreckage of our shattered marriage. A weight had been lifted from my shoulders, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready to face it head-on, armed with a newfound sense of strength and resilience. Mark's betrayal had been a harsh lesson, but it had also been a catalyst for change, a chance to break free from the toxic cycle that had consumed our lives for far too long. As I stepped out into the crisp morning air, I took a deep breath, savoring the taste of freedom. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would write my own story, free from the shackles of a loveless marriage and the toxic influence of those who sought to control me. And as the sun rose over the horizon, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and possibility, a promise of better days to come, where I would finally be the master of my own destiny. As I strode out of Mark's hospital room, the weight of our shattered marriage finally lifted from my shoulders, I was met with a familiar, unwelcome sight. Gloria, her face contorted in a mask of fury. "What have you done, Edith?" she hissed, her eyes boring into me like daggers. I squared my shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. "What needed to be done, Gloria? Mark and I are through." Her nostrils flared, and she took a step closer, her presence looming over me like a dark cloud. "You will not ruin this family, Edith. Not after everything we've built." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that echoed through the sterile hallway. "The family was already ruined, Gloria, and I won't be part of it anymore." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought she might strike me. "So you're just going to abandon your husband in his time of need? After all he's done for you?" I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "Don't try to twist this, Gloria. Mark brought this upon himself with his selfish actions. He's the one who betrayed our vows, our family." Gloria's lips curled into a sneer. "And you think you're blameless in all this? If you had been a better wife, a more attentive partner, he wouldn't have strayed." Her words stung, but I refused to let them pierce my newfound armor. That's a convenient excuse, Gloria, but we both know the truth. Her brow furrowed, and she took a step closer, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. What truth? I met her gaze, unflinching. That you knew about Mark's affair all along, that you helped him cover it up just to preserve your precious family image. Gloria's face drained of color, and for a moment she seemed at a loss for words. Then her eyes narrowed and she regained her composure. So what if I did? She spat. I was protecting our family, something you clearly have no concept of. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You were protecting your own selfish interests, Gloria, just like Mark, and I'm done being a pawn in your twisted games. Her jaw clenched, and I could see the fury simmering just beneath the surface. You ungrateful little wretch. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. You've done nothing for me, Gloria. All you've ever done is tear me down, make me feel small and insignificant. Well, no more. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, as if struck by my words. I'm taking my life back, Gloria, I continued, my voice steady and unwavering, and you and Mark can no longer stand in my way. For a moment we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills, the tension crackling between us like electricity. Then Gloria's shoulders slumped, and I saw a flicker of something I never thought I'd see in her eyes. Defeat. Fine, she muttered, her voice laced with venom. Have it your way, Edith, but don't come crawling back when you realize the mistake you've made. With that, she turned on her heel and stormed away, leaving me standing in the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. As the adrenaline coursed through my veins, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. For years, Gloria had held me in her iron grip, using her manipulative tactics to control every aspect of my life. But not anymore. I was free, truly free, for the first time in as long as I could remember. And as I turned to leave the hospital, a newfound sense of purpose propelled me forward. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would write my own story, free from the toxic influence of those who sought to control me. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I was ready to face it head-on, armed with a strength and resilience that had been forged in the fires of adversity. As I stepped out into the warm embrace of the sun, I couldn't help but smile. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time it was mine to shape, to mold into something beautiful and fulfilling. And as I made my way home to the son who had been my unwavering source of strength and inspiration, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. A united front, bound by a love that could never be broken, even by the most toxic of influences. The weight of the past few weeks seemed to lift from my shoulders as I stepped through the front door, greeted by the familiar warmth of home. Peter rushed to embrace me, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and concern. Mom, you're back. Is everything okay? I pulled him close, savoring the moment. Everything's going to be just fine, sweetheart. Better than fine. He pulled back, his brow furrowed. What do you mean? What happened with Dad? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Peter, your father and we're separating. His eyes widened, and I could see the questions forming on his lips. I know this is a lot to take in, I continued, guiding him to the couch. But it's for the best, believe me. Peter nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on me with an intensity that belied his age. Is it because of the fighting and Dad's, his other woman? I felt a pang of sadness that my son had been exposed to such ugliness, but I knew it was better to be honest with him. Yes, honey, your father made some choices that hurt our family deeply, and as much as I love him, I can't stay in a relationship like that anymore. Peter's eyes glistened with unshed tears. But what about us? Are we still a family? I pulled him into a fierce embrace, my heart swelling with love for this remarkable boy. Of course we are, Peter. You and I will always be a family, no matter what happens. And this time, it'll be a family built on love, respect, and honesty. He nodded against my shoulder, and I could feel the tension slowly leaving his body. I'm sorry you had to go through all this, sweetheart, I murmured, stroking his hair. But I promise, better days are ahead. As we sat there, holding each other close, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, a calm certainty that I was finally on the right path. The road ahead would be challenging, but with Peter by my side, I knew we could weather any storm. In the days and weeks that followed, we settled into a new routine, one free from the toxic influence of Mark and Gloria. I reconnected with old friends, finding solace and support in their unwavering companionship. And slowly but surely, the wounds of the past began to heal. One sunny afternoon, as Peter and I strolled through the park, hand in hand, he turned to me with a smile that warmed my heart. "Mommy, can we visit Grandpa and Grandma tomorrow?" I couldn't help but grin, filled with gratitude for the loving family that had stood by us through it all. "Of course, darling. We're free to do whatever we want now." As we continued our walk, surrounded by the laughter of children and the gentle rustling of leaves, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. This was the life I had dreamed of, a life filled with love, laughter, and the freedom to forge our own path. No longer would we be shackled by the toxic bonds of a broken marriage or the manipulative whims of those who sought to control us. We were free, truly free, to embrace the future on our own terms. And as I looked into Peter's eyes, shining with hope and possibility, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, a united front, bound by a love that could never be broken, even by the most toxic of influences. This was the beginning of our new chapter, one filled with endless possibilities and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. And as we walked hand in hand into the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and gratitude for the resilience that had carried us through the darkest of storms. We had emerged from the ashes of our past, stronger and more resilient than ever before. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I knew that our journey had only just begun. A journey towards healing, happiness, and the reclamation of our lives on our own terms. "James, why did you sell my car without even asking me?" I stood in our brightly lit kitchen, gripping the edge of the countertop. James was lounging on the couch, phone in hand, barely looking up as I spoke. "Emma, I told you last week. We needed the money," James replied casually. His voice was indifferent, almost bored. "The money? For what?" My voice was rising, my patience wearing thin. "For the new entertainment system. You saw how outdated the old one was. We deserved an upgrade," James said with a shrug, his eyes glued to a video on his phone. "That car was important to me, James. It wasn't just about the money. It was mine." My voice cracked, and I took a deep breath, remembering my grandmother's advice to keep my inheritance secret. I never thought I'd need to follow it so strictly. James finally looked up, his expression a mix of irritation and nonchalance. "Come on, Emma, it's just a car. We can get you another one later." I shook my head, frustration boiling over. "You didn't even bother to ask me. This isn't just about the car, James. It's about respect and consideration. You can't just make decisions like this on your own." Our suburban home, usually a tranquil retreat, now felt stifling and alien. The neighborhood outside was quiet, with children playing in front yards and neighbors chatting over fences. To the outside world, we were just another happy couple in a tight-knit community. But inside, the cracks were growing deeper every day. James finally set his phone down and stood up, walking towards me. "Emma, you're overreacting. It's not like we're broke. I'll buy you another car. End of discussion." His dismissive tone cut through me like a knife. I looked at him, searching for the man I'd married, the man who had once been attentive and kind. But all I saw was a stranger, someone who was slowly bleeding me dry of patience and trust. "End of discussion?" I repeated, incredulous. "You can't just dictate how this goes, James. You've crossed a line, and you don't even see it." James's eyes narrowed. "What's really going on here, Emma? You've been acting distant for months. Is there something you're not telling me?" I took a step back, realization dawning. My grandmother's advice echoed in my mind. Now, more than ever, I understood why she had been so adamant. Protecting my inheritance wasn't about the money itself. It was about keeping control over something that was truly mine, especially when everything else seemed to be slipping away. "I don't know, James. Maybe it's because you've stopped caring about what's important to me," I said quietly. "Or maybe it's because you think you can just bulldoze through this marriage, making decisions that suit only you." James scoffed, shaking his head. "You're being dramatic. I'm just trying to improve our lives. Your life, I corrected. Improving your life at my expense. He didn't respond, just stared at me with a mixture of frustration and confusion. I realized then that he truly didn't see the problem, or maybe he didn't want to. Either way, it was clear that something had to change, and fast. As James turned back to his phone, dismissing the conversation, I felt a surge of determination. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I wasn't going to be sidelined in my own life. Grandma's wisdom was a guiding light, and it was time I started listening to it more carefully. Tension hung heavily in the air as I walked out of the kitchen, my heart pounding. One thing was certain. I wasn't going to let James's betrayal define me. This was only the beginning, and I had my own plans to make. "Claire, I don't know what to do anymore," I said, dropping onto her couch. The floral print cushions smelled faintly of lilac. Claire looked up from her magazine, instantly concerned. "Emma, what happened? Did James do something again?" I sighed heavily, running my fingers through my hair. He sold my car without even asking me, just traded it for some stupid entertainment system. Claire's eyes widened in shock. Seriously? Who sells someone's car without asking? That's insane. Yes, and he acted like it wasn't a big deal, just brushed it off like I was overreacting. My voice wavered as I recounted the morning's confrontation. "He's been doing this for a while now, hasn't he?" Claire asked softly. I nodded. "It didn't start this way. When we first got together, he was so kind, so attentive. I felt like I was the center of his universe. But now?" I let the sentence hang, unfinished. Claire squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Have you thought about leaving him?" "You don't have to stay in a situation like this, Emma." I bit my lip, hesitating. "I have, but it's complicated. We've built a life together, and it's not easy to just walk away." Claire's face was etched with concern. "You have to do what's best for you. Always remember that." Later that evening, as I cleaned up the dinner dishes James had left behind, I started thinking about the early days of our relationship. I remembered the picnics in the park, the surprise weekend getaways. He used to plan everything so meticulously, making sure every moment was special. But that James was long gone, replaced by someone who seemed to care more about his gadgets and parties than about me. While scrubbing the last of the pots, I noticed the flashy new entertainment system taking up half the living room. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through James's social media. My heart sank when I saw the photos of his recent parties, extravagant and filled with friends I barely knew. Numerous gadgets cluttered our home, all bought with the money he got from selling my car. I fumed silently, deciding to confront him again when he came home. The door creaked open as James stumbled in, the smell of alcohol clinging to him. "James, where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He laughed drunkenly. "Out with the guys, needed a break, you know?" I took a deep breath. "I saw the photos, all those expensive gadgets and parties. Is that where the money from my car went?" James looked at me, his eyes unfocused. "Come on, Emma. Don't start with this again. It's just stuff. We're having fun." "Fun without considering my feelings?" I snapped. "This is beyond disrespectful, James, that you're ignoring everything I care about." James rolled his eyes, slumping into the couch. "Why don't you ever chill out? You used to be fun." Tears of frustration stung my eyes. "This isn't about fun, James. It's about you taking everything I care about and tossing it aside." He didn't respond, eyes already closing as he passed out on the couch. The sound of his snoring filled the room, but it couldn't drown out the anger and hurt simmering in my chest. I stood there for a moment, looking at the man who once promised to cherish me. Claire's words echoed in my mind. Maybe it was time to make a change, to find the strength Grandma had always believed I had. This betrayal wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of something new, and I was ready to fight for the life I deserved. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, phone in hand. I needed to talk to my parents. I dialed my mom's number and waited. "Emma, sweetheart, how are you?" My mom answered, her voice warm and comforting. "Mom, things with James, they're worse than ever," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, honey, what happened?" she asked, her tone immediately concerned. I quickly explained the car situation and James's ongoing disregard for my feelings. "I'm considering divorce, Mom. I can't do this anymore." There was a pause on the line. "Emma, we've always supported you, no matter what. Your father and I will help you through this." And remember, you have your inheritance. I know, Mom. I might need to use it to move out and start over, I admitted, feeling a small twinge of relief saying it out loud. We'll support you, darling. Do what you need to do, she assured me. As I ended the call, I felt a newfound sense of purpose. It was time to take action. I started drafting an email to a lawyer, seeking advice on the next steps for divorce and considering apartments in a nearby town. After a few hours, I felt more determined than ever. That evening, I kept my phone close, anticipating a reply from the lawyer. As I sat on the couch, James entered the room, eyes suspicious. What have you been doing all day? He asked, his tone accusatory. Just sorting some things out, I replied, keeping my answers vague. James eyed my phone. Who were you talking to earlier? Mom, I needed some advice, I said, avoiding his gaze. Before I knew it, James snatched my phone from my hand. What the hell, James? Give it back! I yelled, lunging after him. He scrolled through my messages, his face darkening. Thinking about leaving me, huh? His voice was laced with anger. Give me my phone, James, now. My voice was firm, even though my heart was pounding. James's eyes flashed dangerously. You think you can just run away with that little inheritance of yours? Everything should go to us, not just you. You've been hiding it all this time? My mind raced. I didn't have to tell you everything. That money was meant to give me security. You're gonna use it to get away from me? He spat, stepping closer. I stood my ground. Yes, James, if that's what it takes, I'm done. He threw the phone on the couch, stepping back, but his expression was still livid. You won't get far with that money. You owe me, Emma. We're in this together. We were in this together, James. You're the one who turned it into something else, I said coldly. James stared at me, seething, before storming out of the room, slamming the door behind him. My hands were shaking, but I felt a rush of determination. This couldn't go on any longer. I had my plan. I was going to make it out of this mess one way or another. The email dinged, signaling a new message from the lawyer. I quickly opened it and read through the advice, solidifying my resolve. It was time to take the next step. I packed a small bag with essentials, calling Claire to give her a heads up. She answered on the first ring. Claire, can I stay with you for a while? I'm leaving tonight. Emma, of course. Come right over. We'll figure this out together, Claire said, her voice unwavering. Grabbing my bag, I took one last look around the house that had become more a prison than a home. Then I walked out the door and didn't look back. I arrived at Claire's house, still gripping the small suitcase. Claire opened the door before I could knock, pulling me into a tight hug. You did the right thing, Emma, she whispered. Thanks, Claire, I replied, stepping inside. We sat down in her living room, the warm ambiance a stark contrast to the cold tension I'd left behind. So what's the plan? Claire asked, handing me a cup of tea. I contacted a lawyer. Tomorrow I'll start looking for a new place and a job. I need to be independent, both emotionally and financially, I explained, taking a sip. Claire nodded. You know you can stay here as long as you need to. We've got this. The next morning, I woke up early, ready to tackle my to-do list. Claire drove me around town, helping me check out apartments. We found a cozy one-bedroom that felt just right. I put down a deposit and scheduled a move-in date. Later, I sat at Claire's kitchen table, laptop open, applying for jobs. The task was tedious but necessary. It wasn't long before emails and phone calls started coming in. By evening, I had lined up several interviews. As I celebrated these small victories with Claire, my phone rang. It was James. My heart raced, but I answered. Emma, where are you? He demanded, his tone aggressive. That's none of your business, I said, trying to stay calm. It is my business. We're married. You can't just walk out, he barked. I had to. You left me no choice, I replied firmly. James scoffed. You think you're brave now, hiding at Claire's? This is our problem, not hers. Tell me where you are. I'm not hiding, and it's not just Claire's problem. I'm done being treated like I don't matter, I said, my voice steady. You owe me, Emma. For the mortgage, the bills, everything. You think you can just run off with your inheritance and leave me to deal with everything? His desperation was palpable. This isn't about money, James. It's about respect, or your lack of it, I said, tears filling my eyes. You'll regret this, Emma, he hissed before hanging up. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. Claire looked at me, concern etched on her face. He won't stop, will he? She said softly. Not easily, I admitted, steeling myself. The next few days flew by in a blur of apartment preparations and job interviews. I felt stronger each day, my resolve hardening. One evening, while I was organizing my new apartment, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from James. "You're making a huge mistake. You'll come crawling back. They always do." I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I typed back quickly. "No, James, I'm done crawling. This is my life now." I hit send and blocked his number. Standing by the window, I watched the sun setting over my new neighborhood, feeling a sense of freedom. The next morning, I went to my first job interview. Walking into the office, I was greeted by a friendly receptionist who led me through the process. The interview went well, and I left feeling hopeful. Returning to my new apartment, I found Claire waiting with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "To new beginnings," she toasted, handing me a glass. "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking glasses. As we sat and talked, I realized I was beginning to reclaim my life. Each step forward was a step away from James and his toxic influence. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about all I'd left behind and everything that lay ahead. It wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. A week later, I got the call offering me the job. I smiled, tears of joy streaming down my face. It was a sign that I was on the right path. I was building a new life, one step at a time, and it was a life where I mattered. The town's annual fair was in full swing. Kids sprinted between booths, their laughter mingling with the cheerful hum of the crowd. I was helping Claire set up her jewelry stall when I felt a tap on my shoulder. "Emma," Jack's familiar voice greeted me. He was a mutual friend, someone dependable who'd always been kind. "Oh, hey, Jack, how's it going?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Pretty good. But hey, I heard about you and James. Are you okay?" Jack's concern was evident. I sighed. "It's been rough, but I'm getting through it." Jack nodded, but his face turned cautious. "Speaking of James, he's here. And, well, he isn't handling things well." Before I could ask what he meant, a loud commotion drew our attention. James was in the middle of the fairground, visibly intoxicated, shouting at a group of young men gathered around a barbecue pit. "Oh no," I whispered, feeling my stomach knot. "Hey, it's none of your business!" James yelled, pushing one of the men. The crowd's murmur grew louder, eyes turning toward the spectacle. I took a deep breath. I need to handle this. "Emma, are you sure?" Claire asked, worry etched on her face. "I have to," I replied, squaring my shoulders and weaving through the crowd. As I approached, James spotted me and stumbled over. "Emma, there you are. Thought you could avoid me forever?" He slurred, his breath reeking of alcohol. "James, you're making a scene. Let's talk somewhere else," I urged, trying to stay calm. He laughed bitterly. "Why? So you can walk out again? You think you're so much better now?" "James, you're drunk. This isn't the place," I said firmly. "Everyone should know how you abandoned your husband," James shouted, his voice carrying over the crowd. I could feel the eyes of the townsfolk on us, the whispers spreading like wildfire. Anger and embarrassment churned inside me, but I wouldn't let him drag me back down. "James, we're done. You need to accept that," I said, my voice steady. "Now please, go home before you make this worse." "Worse? You think this can get worse?" His eyes were wild, unhinged. "You owe me, Emma. You can't just walk away without paying your dues." "I don't owe you anything, James. I'm done being your pawn," I replied, stepping back as he moved closer. A friend intervened, grabbing James by the arm. "Come on, man. Let's get you out of here." James struggled, but was eventually pulled away, his furious eyes locked on mine. "You're going to regret this, Emma." As he was dragged off, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Claire appeared by my side, her hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "Yes, it had to be done," I said, my voice shaky but resolute. We continued setting up the stall, the mood around us slowly returning to normal. But I noticed several sympathetic looks from people who'd witnessed the altercation. Hours passed and the fair wore on, becoming a blur of faces and activities. That evening, after packing up, I drove to my new apartment. Walking in, I felt a mix of exhaustion and relief. I was finally free of James's constant manipulation, even if the road ahead was still uncertain. I spent the next few days settling in, gradually feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. One morning, I walked over to the mirror in my new bedroom and caught my reflection. There was a spark in my eyes, one that had been missing for a long time. This was my life, my space, and my chance to rebuild. The memory of James's public meltdown was still fresh, but it only fueled my resolve. I was moving forward, and nothing he did would pull me back. Stepping out into the crisp morning air, I felt a newfound sense of purpose. Today was just another step, and step by step I was reclaiming my future. One morning, a week after the fair, I was getting ready for my first day at the new job when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jack. "Emma, can we meet up? There's something you need to know about James." My curiosity piqued. I agreed to meet him at the local coffee shop after work. The day passed quickly, filled with training and meeting new colleagues. By evening, I felt both exhausted and exhilarated. At the coffee shop, Jack was already waiting with 2 drinks. He waved me over, his expression serious. "Thanks for coming, Emma," he said, sliding one of the cups over to me. "No problem, Jack. What's going on?" I asked, taking a sip. Jack took a deep breath. "James lost his job, the company downsized, and he was let go." I blinked in surprise. "I didn't know that. He hasn't contacted me since the fair." "Yeah, he's not taking it well," Jack continued. "He's been telling people you left him at the worst possible time, trying to play the victim, but there's more." I leaned in, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" "He's planning something, Emma. He told a mutual friend he's going to try to win you back so he can get his hands on your inheritance." Anger flared inside me. "He really thinks he can manipulate me again?" Jack nodded. "He's desperate, Emma. You need to be careful." "Thanks for the warning, Jack. I'll stay vigilant," I said, my resolve hardening. As I walked back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. James losing his job changed things, making him more unpredictable. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside, my mind racing. I needed to be prepared for whatever scheme he cooked up. The next few days were a whirlwind of work and settling into my new routine. One evening, as I was organizing my closet, there was a knock at the door. I hesitated, peering through the peephole. It was James. "Emma, open up. We need to talk," he called, his voice shaky. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door slightly, leaving the chain on. "What do you want, James?" He looked disheveled, clearly stressed. "Emma, I'm sorry for everything. I've lost my job. I need your help." "You need my help," I repeated, incredulous. "After everything you've done?" "Please, Emma, we can work this out. Think about what we had," he pleaded, trying to sound genuine. "What we had, James, is over. You made sure of that," I replied firmly. His demeanor shifted, his eyes flashing with anger. "You can't leave me like this. You owe me." "I owe you nothing," I said, slamming the door shut and locking it. I could hear James banging on the door, shouting, but I leaned against it, breathing deeply. After a few minutes, the banging stopped, and I heard him leave. I checked the peephole to make sure he was gone before calling Claire. "Emma, what's wrong?" she asked, hearing the panic in my voice. James showed up at my apartment. "He's acting desperate and unhinged," I explained. "Stay calm, Emma. You need to protect yourself." "Consider getting a restraining order," Claire suggested. "I'll look into it." "Thanks, Claire," I said, feeling a bit more anchored after talking to her. The next morning, I called the lawyer to discuss my options. He advised me to document everything and start the process for a restraining order. I followed his advice, keeping a log of every interaction with James. Days turned into weeks, and I focused on building my new life. One afternoon, while taking a break at work, I saw a familiar face across the street. It was James, watching me. My heart pounded, but I straightened my shoulders and continued with my day. This was my life now, my chance to be free. No matter how desperate James became, I wasn't going back. This was about reclaiming my future, and I was determined not to let him take that away from me. The moment I stepped out of my building, I saw James sitting on a bench across the street. His eyes locked onto mine, and he stood up, walking towards me. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered under my breath. I quickened my pace, determined not to engage with him, but he caught up to me before I could reach the corner. "Emma, wait," James called out, reaching for my arm. I yanked my arm away, anger flaring. "What do you want, James? I've told you it's over." "Just hear me out," he pleaded, desperation clear in his voice. "I've been trying to get back on my feet, but it's been hard without you. We can make this work again." I stared at him, incredulous. "You really think I'd come back after everything? You manipulated, lied, and used me. There's nothing left to fix." James looked around, a flicker of anger passing over his face. We were married, Emma. That means working through the tough times. I did work through the tough times, James, alone, while you partied and spent money you didn't have, I shot back, feeling a rush of righteous indignation. A passerby slowed down, eyes widening at the commotion, but I stood my ground. The whole world might as well know what I've been through. James's posture shifted from pleading to confrontational. You want people to think I'm the bad guy? You've been hiding money, living this new life while I'm struggling. Living this new life isn't easy, but it's necessary, I said, trying to keep calm. I need peace, James, something you can't seem to offer. His eyes darkened. You think you're better than me now? No, James. I think I deserve better than how you treated me, I replied, turning to walk away. James grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. This isn't over, Emma. You're not getting rid of me that easily. Get your hands off me, I yelled, drawing the attention of more bystanders. James's grip loosened, but the venom in his eyes remained. A tall man in a suit stepped forward. Is everything all right here? He asked, eyeing James warily. Yes, thank you, I answered quickly. I was just leaving. James glared at the man, but took a step back. This isn't over, he repeated, his voice low and threatening. Ignoring his parting words, I hurried away, my heart pounding. This encounter couldn't scare me into submission. It only made me more resolute. Back at my apartment, I immediately called my lawyer. James is stalking me. I need to escalate this. What are my options? We can file for a restraining order immediately, he replied. Document today's incident in detail and we'll proceed. Hours later, while I completed the necessary paperwork, a sense of empowerment washed over me. Finally, action was being taken to protect my newfound peace. The next week passed without incident until I received a call from an unknown number. My heart sank when I heard his voice again. Emma, you think a piece of paper will keep me away? You have no idea what I'm capable of, James hissed before the line went dead. Trembling with a mix of fear and fury, I called the police and reported the threat, adding it to the growing case against him. This pattern of intimidation and control would end here. A day later, Claire called me with surprising news. Emma, people are talking. They know about James's behavior. He's losing friends and support left and right. Good, I said, feeling a sense of vindication. He's finally getting what he deserves. As I hung up, I felt an unexpected wave of relief. James's grip on my life was weakening. The community was seeing his true colors, just as I had. I stood by the window, looking out at the bustling evening street below. My journey towards freedom was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hope. James's fall from grace had begun, and I was reclaiming my future one step at a time. Weeks had passed, and life was slowly returning to a semblance of normal. I was flourishing at my new job, finding satisfaction in the work and camaraderie with my colleagues. Evenings were filled with laughter and support from Claire, who had become my rock. One afternoon I was engrossed in crafting a presentation when my phone buzzed. It was from Jack. Hey Emma, are you free to meet for coffee later? Something you should know. My curiosity piqued, I agreed. We met at the little cafe by my office. Jack was already there, looking concerned. Emma, thanks for meeting me, he greeted, gesturing to the seat across from him. No problem, Jack. What's going on? I asked, sitting down. It's about James. He's not doing well. He's been trying to get people to turn against you, but it's backfiring. People see him for what he is now, Jack explained. Relief washed over me. Good, he needs to face the consequences. But there's more. James got into some trouble with the law. Drunk driving. He's lost even more support, Jack continued. I nodded, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and pity. Thanks for telling me, Jack. I needed to hear that. After our coffee, I decided to take a walk through the park. The cool breeze and the rustling of leaves felt liberating. It was here I bumped into James, looking disheveled and defeated. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, his eyes darkened. Well, look who it is, he said, his voice dripping with bitterness. James, please. I don't want any trouble, I replied, keeping my distance. You've ruined everything for me, Emma. You and your lies, he spat, his face contorting with anger. Lies, James? The only person who ruined your life is you. Your actions have consequences, I retorted. He took a shaky step closer. Consequences? I've lost everything. My respect, friends, all because of you. I stood my ground. No, James, it's because of your choices. I simply refuse to be your victim anymore. His expression wavered, a flicker of desperation in his eyes. You think you're free of me? This isn't over. Before he could say anything more, 2 police officers approached. Mr. Miller? One of them asked. James turned, his bravado melting away. Yes? You're under arrest for violating the restraining order. You were warned to stay away from Ms. Miller, the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. James's face turned pale. Emma, you can stop this. Tell them it's a mistake, he pleaded, panic in his voice. I shook my head. No, James, this ends now. The officers led him away, and I stood there, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. It was truly over. Returning to my apartment that evening, I found a letter in the mail. Opening it, I discovered I had been approved for a higher position at work, a promotion. It felt like the universe was giving me a sign that I was on the right path. I called Claire to share the good news, and she was ecstatic. We celebrated with a small dinner at my place, toasting to new beginnings and the end of a dark chapter. That night, I took a moment to reflect on my journey. From the betrayal that shattered my world to the steps I took to rebuild it. I had found strength I didn't know I possessed and had reclaimed my life piece by piece. Walking through the bustling streets the next day, I felt lighter. The weight of past traumas was lifting, replaced by a sense of empowerment and hope. I deserved this new life. A life where my worth was not dictated by someone else's whims. As I turned a corner, I caught a glimpse of someone familiar. James, disheveled and on the edge, standing outside a convenience store, clearly struggling. Our eyes briefly met, but there was no connection left. I walked on, a silent resolve in my heart. James's downfall was complete. My future, bright and full of possibilities, was just beginning, and I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time. I stared at Tom's back as he walked away, his sister Nancy trailing behind him like an obedient lapdog. Maggie, taking care of your mother-in-law is your job while we're gone. Don't mess it up, he tossed over his shoulder, without even a glance in my direction. As the front door slammed shut, I let out a long breath, my shoulders sagging. 4 weeks alone with Caroline, Tom's bedridden, mute mother. The same woman who had treated me with thinly veiled disdain from the moment I'd married her son 5 years ago. I trudged up the stairs to Caroline's room, dreading the next month. She lay motionless on the bed, her pale, wrinkled face expressionless as always. Well, Caroline, looks like it's just you and me, I muttered, receiving no response. The first week passed in a blur of monotony. I fed Caroline, bathed her, changed her bedding, all while she stared blankly ahead, never uttering a sound. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling. On the 8th day, something shifted. As I leaned over to adjust Caroline's pillows, her bony hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. I gasped, meeting her piercing blue eyes for the first time. Enough of this charade, Maggie, she rasped, her voice rough from disuse. We have work to do. I could only gape at her, my mind reeling. Caroline pushed herself upright, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. But how? You've been pretending, she finished, a wry smile tugging at her lips, playing the helpless old woman to avoid dealing with my wretched family. As she began to explain, revealing a web of deceit and cruelty I'd never imagined, a fierce determination took root within me. Tom's betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever known, but now with Caroline's help, I would unravel every last secret. The game was on. As Caroline's revelations sank in, a wave of emotions crashed over me. Shock, anger, betrayal. I had always known Tom's family was a little off, but this was a whole new level of depravity. How could you let them treat you like that? I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. You're their mother, their own flesh and blood. Caroline's expression hardened. At first, I tried to fight back, but they slowly stripped me of everything. My money, my power, even my dignity. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. Her eyes bored into mine, icy and resolute. That's why we have to stop them, Maggie, before they do the same to you. A shiver ran down my spine at her ominous words. Was that Tom's plan all along? To isolate me, make me dependent on him and his vile family? The thought made me sick. Start from the beginning, I urged Caroline. I need to know everything. and so she told me a sordid tale of greed, manipulation, and outright cruelty that made my blood boil. How her late husband's inheritance had sparked a vicious power struggle within the family. How Tom and Nancy had slowly turned against her, stripping her assets and forcing her into a life of subservience, all under the guise of caring for their poor, helpless mother. By the time Caroline finished, hot tears of rage stung my eyes. "Those bastards," I spat. "Using their own mother like that." A gnarled hand gripped mine, startling me. "That's why we have to fight back," Caroline stated, her voice laced with steel. "They won't see it coming." A plan began to form, pieces slotting into place like a twisted puzzle. We would follow Tom and his wretched family to Maui, catch them in the act of whatever new scheme they were hatching. And when we did, justice would be ours. Over the next few days, Caroline and I hatched our plan. She knew someone who could help us, an old friend named Mark who used to work as a private investigator. "Are you sure we can trust him?" I asked warily as Caroline dialed the number. She shot me a reassuring look. "Mark's one of the few decent people left in this world. He'll help us bring those snakes down." The phone call was brief, but by the time Caroline hung up, a sly grin had crept across her weathered features. "He's in. Said he's been itching for some juicy drama to sink his teeth into." A surprising burst of laughter escaped my lips. Who would have thought sweet demure Maggie Owens would be plotting an elaborate revenge scheme? If Tom could see me now... The thought of my treacherous husband sobered me instantly. Caroline must have noticed my change in demeanor, because she reached out and gave my hand a comforting squeeze. "I know it hurts, dear. Believe me, I understand the pain of having your own family betray you." Her eyes hardened. "But that's exactly why we have to do this, to show them we're not just a couple of helpless old ladies to be manipulated and cast aside." Her words lit a fire in my belly. She was right. For too long, I had meekly accepted the crumbs Tom and his vicious brood deigned to toss my way. But not anymore. This time, we would be the ones calling the shots. Mark arrived 2 days later, a rumpled but kind-looking man in his 40s. As Caroline introduced us, I studied him carefully, looking for any signs of dishonesty or ulterior motives, but his warm brown eyes crinkled with genuine compassion as he shook my hand. "Don't you worry, Maggie," he said in a gentle southern drawl. "We're going to nail those lying snakes, but good." And so we got to work, poring over flight manifests and hotel reservations, mapping out every step of Tom's upcoming trip to Maui. With each detail we uncovered, my resolve solidified like steel. Finally, the day arrived. As I stood in the kitchen watching the black Suburban pull away, Tom's stupid smug face visible through the tinted windows, I felt a surge of vicious satisfaction. Let him enjoy this little vacation. It would be his last taste of freedom before everything came crashing down around him. I turned to find Caroline and Mark watching me, twin expressions of grim determination etched on their faces. Time to go hunting. With Tom and his family now en route to Maui, the real work began. Mark sprang into action, a whirlwind of phone calls and computer searches as he dug up every scrap of intel on their targets. "This Tom fella sure loves his luxury resorts," he muttered, scribbling notes on a legal pad. "But we can use that against him." Caroline and I huddled close, watching with bated breath as Mark cross-referenced hotel listings and flight schedules. Finally, he circled something with a triumphant flourish. "Got it! They're staying at the Grand Wailea Resort. Pricey place, but that means more staff to bribe for information." He shot us a conspiratorial wink. A sly grin tugged at Caroline's lips. "Excellent work, Mark. Now about getting us over there discreetly." By the time Tom's sniveling voice crackled over the answering machine with some half-baked excuse about needing to extend their stay, we were ready. Fake identities, meticulously forged documents, Mark had covered every base with the same care as a master artist crafting his next masterpiece. The morning we left, I stood in the driveway, squinting against the harsh Arizona sun as I drank in the sight of my quaint little house. Once upon a time, it had represented everything I'd ever wanted: a loving home, a caring husband, maybe even children someday. Now it was just another empty facade, a monument to the lies my life had become. Tossing my suitcase into the trunk with a decisive thunk, I slid into the back seat beside Caroline. Her face was set in stony determination, any traces of frailty or fear utterly banished. This was a woman who had stared into the depths of betrayal and emerged emboldened, ready to face any challenge head-on. As Mark peeled out of the driveway, I twisted in my seat for one last glimpse of the house rapidly disappearing behind us. A strange sense of finality washed over me, as if I were shedding an old, tarnished skin and being reborn into something new, something stronger, uncompromising, unafraid. This time, there would be no more lies, no more hiding in the shadows while others schemed and plotted in the light. This time, the snakes would get their just desserts. Maui was every bit as beautiful as the glossy travel brochures promised, sun-drenched beaches, swaying palms, and crystal-clear waters that seemed to beckon weary souls. Too bad we weren't there for a vacation. Mark had booked us a modest room at a different resort, far enough away to avoid any accidental run-ins with Tom's crew. Not that they'd recognize us anyway, thanks to his meticulously crafted fake identities. "First order of business," he said, tossing a stack of crisp bills on the rickety table, "is getting eyes and ears inside the Grand Walia." Caroline's eyes glinted with determination. "Leave that to me, dear. I have a few tricks left up my sleeve." True to her word, within 48 hours, she'd made some very lucrative friends among the resort staff. A maid, a bartender, even the concierge. All it took was flashing a little cash, and they were more than happy to keep their eyes peeled for any suspicious behavior from the Owens family. The first report came 3 days later, delivered in a hushed voice over burner phones like we were deep undercover spies. Becca, the maid, had spotted Tom getting awfully cozy with a pretty young blonde by the adult pool, hand-holding, whispered endearments, the works. White-hot rage lanced through me at the mental image. So not only was the bastard cheating, he was bold enough to do it right under his family's noses? I fought the urge to hurl the phone across the room as Caroline flashed me a sympathetic look. "There's more," Becca continued in a trembling voice. "I overheard Nancy and that trollop Becca talking about some kind of plan to cut you out, Maggie, make it look like you just up and left Tom high and dry so they could take the house." The room seemed to spin around me as the weight of her words sank in. So that's what this whole sick charade had been about, robbing me of everything I had left, leaving me destitute and alone. Tears of fury stung my eyes as Caroline reached out to grip my arm, steadying me. "Breathe. Maggie," she murmured. "We've got them right where we want them." Taking a shuddering breath, I forced myself to nod. Caroline was right. Panicking now would only play right into their hands. We had to stay focused, gather every last shred of evidence to crush them utterly. Over the next few days, the calls kept coming. Sordid details of Tom's affair, overheard conversations about their insidious plot to steal my home and inheritance. With each new revelation, the white-hot anger burning in my chest flared brighter, becoming an inferno of righteous indignation that threatened to consume me. Finally, the night before we were scheduled to strike, Mark gathered us around the cheap motel table with a grim look. "We've got everything we need to bury those snakes," he stated, his deep voice laced with conviction. "Photos, recordings, the whole 9 yards. They won't be able to talk their way out of this one." Caroline reached across the table, grasping my hand in a vice-like grip. "Are you ready, dear? Once we start down this road, there's no turning back." Meeting her blazing gaze, I felt something shift deep inside, a sense of unshakable purpose, of being in the dead calm eye of the storm before all hell broke loose. This was it, the moment everything changed. "Let's do this," I said, the words ringing with a cold finality. Tomorrow, the Owens family would reap what they'd sown, and this time, I'd be the one dealing the blows. The next evening, showtime arrived. Mark had managed to score us a reservation at Ferraro's, one of the ritziest restaurants at the Grand Wailea, the perfect place to spring our trap. As the valet whisked our rental car away, I smoothed my hands over the slinky black dress Caroline had insisted I wear. "You want them squirming, dear," she'd said with a wicked glint in her eye. "Give them something to look at." The maitre d' led us through the opulent dining room, weaving between tables filled with vacationing millionaires obliviously enjoying their overpriced meals. My heart was pounding a staccato rhythm in my chest as we approached our destination, a semi-secluded alcove near the back, perfectly positioned for our little encounter. They were already there. Tom, resplendent in a tailored linen suit that probably cost more than my car. Nancy, draped in gaudy jewels befitting a faded aristocrat. And beside them, the pretty young blonde I recognized from the photos, Becca, Tom's latest conquest. I felt Caroline tense beside me as we approached, no doubt fighting the urge to rush forward and unleash decades of pent-up fury. Mark's reassuring hand on my elbow was the only thing keeping me grounded. Tom was the first to notice us, his brow furrowing in confusion that quickly morphed into ill-concealed panic. "And Maggie? What are you doing here?" Well, if it isn't the happy family," I drawled, surprised by the biting sarcasm dripping from my words. "Enjoying your vacation, Tom?" He opened and closed his mouth like a gasping fish, shooting panicked glances between me and the oblivious Becca. Nancy, never one to be upstaged, puffed out her bony chest in a pitiful attempt at bravado. "And just what is the meaning of this, Maggie?" she snapped, lips curling into a condescending sneer. "Barging in on our family holiday, putting on such a shameful display. Can it, Nancy?" The words sliced through her tirade like a hot knife through butter. We both know this is no family vacation. With a deft flick of my wrist, I spread the damning photos across the crisp linen tablecloth. Tom draped all over Becca by the pool, whispering into her ear, his face drained of color as his mistress's pretty features contorted in shock and revulsion. You've been watching us?" he choked out, hands trembling. A cruel smile twisted my lips. "Among other things, care to explain to your little friend here about your plan to steal my home, my inheritance?" Becca's head whipped around, eyes wide with a mixture of horror and bewildered hurt. "Tom, what is she talking about?" The question seemed to catalyze something within him. Suddenly he was on his feet, fists clenched, a vein pulsing angrily in his forehead. "You stupid little he snarled, seemingly forgetting we were surrounded by gawking onlookers. That's when Caroline made her move. With a spryness that belied her age, she shot out of her seat and seized him by the lapels, slamming him back into his chair with a surprising burst of strength. "Not another word out of you," she hissed, her face a mask of pure venom as she loomed over her cowering son. "You've tormented me for the last time." Tom's eyes bulged in shock and terror as he finally registered the woman restraining him, the same helpless old crone he'd been belittling and demeaning for years. "Mom? But how?" The sickly sweet smile she turned on him then was somehow more chilling than any glare. "What's the matter, Tommy? You look like you've seen a ghost." The shocked silence that fell over our secluded alcove was deafening. Tom stared up at his mother in abject horror, as if she'd grown a second head right before his eyes. Nancy looked equally stunned, her bravado evaporating like smoke. "But you were bedridden," Tom finally sputtered, grasping at straws. "We took care of you, Mother, after Dad died and left everything in shambles." "Don't you dare play the victim with me, Thomas Owens." Caroline spat, her frail body practically vibrating with pent-up rage. "Not after what you and your wretched sister did to me." Her piercing gaze swung to Nancy, who shrank back in her chair. "Stripping me of my assets, my dignity, my very identity, all for that blasted inheritance. Did you really think I wouldn't eventually catch on to your game?" It was like a dam had burst. Years of deception, manipulation, and suffering came pouring out in a torrent of recriminations. Caroline laid it all bare. The vicious power struggle that erupted after her husband's death, the slow erosion of her autonomy at the hands of her own children, the utter disregard they'd shown her as a human being. "We did what was best for the family," Nancy attempted feebly, but her protests were swiftly silenced by a withering glare. "Best for the family?" Caroline laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Or best for your own greed? I may be old, but I'm not senile. I know exactly what you two vipers were planning here in Maui." She jerked her chin toward the still scattered photos, Tom and Becca's indiscretions laid bare for all to see. "Using this little tramp to cuckold Maggie, make her look unhinged so you could steal her home out from under her, just like you did to me." Becca made a small, pained noise in the back of her throat, tears welling in her wide eyes. Tom reached out a placating hand, but she flinched away, revulsion etched across her delicate features. Is that true?" She turned to me, anguish and betrayal writ large. "Were you just using me to take everything from your wife?" The lost, broken look on Tom's face would have almost been comical if the situation weren't so twisted. His mouth worked soundlessly as he floundered for an excuse. any lie to salvage what was left of his pathetic charade. In the end, he simply slumped back in his chair, a puppet with its strings cut, defeated. Nancy, however, wasn't quite ready to surrender. Rounding on me with bared teeth, she hissed, "You little bitch! After everything we've done for you, putting a roof over your head, clothes on your back." "That's enough." The words sliced through Nancy's vitriol like a blade, cold and utterly devoid of mercy. Straightening to my full height, I met her hateful glare with an icy one of my own. "Your lies and manipulations end here," I stated, each word ringing with finality. "The Maggie you knew, the sweet, naive little doormat, is gone. Don't like it?" I gestured to the surrounding diners, gawking in scandalized fascination. "Too bad. The whole world can see you for what you really are now." A muscle twitched in Nancy's jaw, but she seemed to realize the futility of arguing. Slowly, almost grudgingly, she sank back into her seat in sullen defeat. As I surveyed the shattered remains of the Owens clan, a strange sense of lightness washed over me, as if a crushing weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders after all this time. The anger, the hurt, the years of rage and resentment, it all seemed to melt away in that moment, leaving only a hollow sort of pity in its wake. These were just sad, small people obsessed with wealth and status, to the point of self-destruction. By trying to control me, they'd ultimately lost everything. Their money, their standing, even each other. And in the end, their defeat was entirely of their own making. The flight back from Maui was a blur. Caroline and I huddled together in the emergency exit row, sipping tiny bottles of bourbon and relishing the silence. For once, there were no snakes waiting to strike from the shadows, just the promise of a new beginning. Mark had already made arrangements to handle the legal ramifications of Tom's exposed misdeeds. With his connections and the wealth of evidence we'd gathered, he assured us that the appropriate authorities would be brought into the loop to address any potential criminal charges. As for me, I simply didn't have the energy to even think about pressing charges or going through a lengthy legal battle. I just wanted to move on. The first thing I did when we returned to Arizona was put the house on the market. It didn't take long to find a buyer. Tom's family had done me the favor of selecting a home in a prime neighborhood. As I signed the final paperwork that transferred ownership, I felt an unexpected pang of sadness watching the new owner's excited expressions. "Try not to make the same mistakes I did," I couldn't help but murmur as I handed over the keys. With the house settled, it was time to decide my next steps. Caroline and I spent an evening camped out at a local diner, poring over maps and apartment listings as we tried to figure out our new path. "I was thinking somewhere new," she said, tracing her finger over the map. "A fresh start, away from all these bad memories." I nodded slowly. As much as I'd once loved the idea of settling down in the suburbs, raising a family of my own, that dream felt tainted now, irrevocably tarnished by Tom's betrayal and the upheaval that followed. Maybe it was for the best to leave it all behind, to forge ahead into the unknown. "I'm open to it," I agreed. "Any preferences?" Caroline's eyes took on a distant look as she studied the map. "You know, I've always wanted to see New England in the fall. The changing leaves, the crisp air." She let out a contented sigh. "It seems like it would be a lovely place to plant some new roots." I couldn't help but smile at the image she painted, the two of us surrounded by vibrant autumn splendor, finally at peace after the turmoil we'd endured. A chance to reinvent ourselves in a place where the Owens name meant nothing. New England it is, then. In the weeks that followed, we began making preparations for our new life, selling or donating what little we had left in Arizona, researching potential towns and job prospects in the Northeast. With each day that passed, it became easier to shed the weight of the past and look ahead with a sense of renewal. On the morning we were set to depart, I took one last walk through the empty house. Upstairs, I peeked into the room that had once been mine and Caroline's command center, covered in maps and photographs detailing every minute of our revenge plot. So much had happened within these walls, so much hurt and anger, yes, but also a reckoning long overdue. A bittersweet smile tugged at my lips as I turned away. The past was the past, the slithering shadows forever banished. Whatever lay ahead in New England was still a mystery, but this time I vowed to march forward with open eyes and a fearless heart. After all, we had already faced down the worst the Owens family could throw at us. From here, the path could only lead forward. As I made my way down the stairs one final time, I felt lighter than I had in years, free of the burdens that once weighed me down. Out in the hallway, Caroline was waiting with an expectant look. "Ready, dear?" she asked, a warm, conspiratorial smile curving her lips. Returning her smile, I gave a decisive nod. We had made it through the shadows. Now it was time to embrace the light.